so I was only able to get one on here.
Je vais demander à quelqu'un de me dire s'il veut quelque chose de Sandrine. C'est bien dommage que les casquettes, on a bien. Ça creuse un peu à la BD. Je vais lui demander.
For stuff like that, you can have your offset, which is like where your character's starting head is. So almost always you'll start in the center here. Then you have sensitivity, as always. So when you have it cranked up, it means like it'll almost be like one-to-one style scaling. Then you have smoothness, which is how smooth will it actually be. So all this stuff, as you go through it, you'll see as you want to play with stuff, body up, down, tilts. They're all really the same thing, just over and over and over again. Now, your expressions, you can have, like, you can play with your character's expression, like, nose up, down, top, min, top, max. It's a lot of just kind of really cool features you can play with for the avatar. After this, we have a karaoke panel.
All right, what's going on,
I
everybody?
guess
It's
if
your
you're going
boy,
to have
Big
like
Q
a
from
singing
Platinum Style
thing
Media.
on your stream,
And
you can have the
today, I
karaoke
just
panel when
want to
you're
kind of
capturing
get
the screen.
into a
Obviously, the
little
karaoke thing will
something
pop
talking
up here,
about
so that way you
live
can have
streaming.
that.
Now,
Plus,
you
you
know,
can
guys
see it
have
on
been
your
kind of
screen
following
too,
the
which
channel.
is
Y'all know
very helpful.
that I kind of
Voice
just
effects,
fell
if you want to
into
have
live
like
streaming,
an
and I think
echo or
it's like
something,
really cool. I'm
you
gonna
add
tell
a
you,
voice effect,
one of the things I really
and
like
then
about
you
it
just
is
play
the
with
fact
the
that
settings
you
as
don't
they
really
are.
have to do a whole lot of editing after the fact. You kind of got to do
What else
everything.
we got here? We
I
got
find like you got
add
to do
text
most of your
image
stuff before
overlay
you
editor.
go,
We've already saw that.
before you press record.
And then we have
And then
general
after
options,
it's done,
which is like
you know, since
hide
everything
your
is already
logo,
set up properly, all you really
autosave
have
is
to
turned
do is
on
just
or
like
off,
stop
use track
broadcasting.
mode,
The show is done.
hide tips.
I love it. I think it's
I
fantastic.
wouldn't
It
actually
kind of
advise
takes
hiding tips if
a
you
lot
don't know
of
what you're
that
doing
pressure
totally.
off
They are
getting
pretty
videos
nice to
edited
have.
on time and things like that. So,
Use
with
audio
all
lip
that
sync
being
on key
said,
press if you don't want it to do it
I
right
think we're
away.
going to do this into a three-part
Enable
series. I
hooked
think that's what we're going
keys,
to do. I think this is part one.
swap
In
the
this
stream
part,
colors.
I'm just going to pretty much show
And then you
you
have
how to
toggle
set up
separate
your
window, where
broadcast
if you
in
really
your
like, this is
broadcasting
actually a really
software
nice
now.
feature to have, because this way you
With
don't actually
all the different
have to have the full window
broadcast
up.
software
You can
that's
just use this
available.
to
I mean, like
capture,
if you are
which is
streaming
perfect
to
because it looks a lot
Ustream, they
cleaner
have
this
their
way, too.
own
And
broadcasting
also,
software.
if you want to try and edit
Twitch
stuff,
TV, they
people
have
will
a
see
couple
this
different
window
options you
and
can
not the
choose.
window with all the editing.
YouTube has their own little
tools on
thing,
it.
Wirecast.
Would you like to save
YouTube
screenshots
Live,
too? You can pick
Wirecast.
your directory
And
folder.
as you can see right here, I
Stream
actually have
flip,
Wirecast.
so,
But what we're going to
you know,
be
like,
using
if you wanna
today
flip
is
anything,
XSplit, right?
then you can do
I mean,
that.
I had my
normally
reasons
use no
for
flip.
settling
video
on
input stream,
XSplit
I
to
would
me giving me
advise
the best
not to.
performance. Especially
Screenshot
the way
delay
I
if
like
you
to
want
do
to like
stuff.
time something really funny,
you know,
but
in
you
this
don't want
particular
to
video,
do it right
showing you
away.
how to set up your
You can use
broadcast,
it for
we are
for
going
that.
to be.
And then you have your parental controls if you don't want your kids doing it, your keybinds, and
Hello
your
everybody,
languages.
Chris here, and in this
Following
video
that, you
I'd
have your
like to show
graphics.
you how
Now,
to get
obviously this is
set
like
up
a really
with
important thing. You have to have your
XSplit
webcam.
Broadcaster,
You can set
basically
your
from start to
you
finish.
can set your resolution to high def.
Hey,
So that way,
welcome into
now
Tech
it's like
Tips and Tricks.
really good.
I've seen a lot
You
of
have
you
your audio
guys that
recording
have
software.
watched
I would set this one,
a
and then your audio
tutorial
playback.
about how
Okay,
to
and then we
set
go to
up
graphics,
XSplit
and I always use I
Broadcaster,
always scale it down
and
to 720p
I
just
didn't
because
really
that way it's
do a
easier
super good job
to
last
push
time
through
of setting it all up
onto
for
the
you
stream.
guys to
It
really
doesn't
show
require
you
as
how to
much
set it up.
power.
So I'm
You
going
have
to make a
sounds, which is
follow-up
your
video
delay if
on
you
it
want to
and
have
just
delay
show
on
you
your
a little bit
stream,
more
or
basics
your noise gate.
on how to
This
set
is
it
what's
up
going to be
and
what
get you up
activates
and
your
running here. So
microphone.
let's get started.
So as you can
I
see,
am
like
under
this is not
screen
working
3
right
right
now,
now.
but normally
So
the
let me show
threshold
you
is
how you
where
add
it's going
the
to activate the
webcam
character's
to it.
mouth. So using that, that's how you get that set. And then you have performance.
Vous
devez construire des pylônes supplémentaires. Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais. Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais. Vos alliés livrent bataille. attaqués.
Vous avez besoin de moi.
Vos sondes sont attaquées. Recherche terminée. Vos alliés livrent bataille. Vos alliés subissent une attaque.
Je suis là. Montrons notre fureur à l'ennemi. Vous avez froid.
Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais.
Je suis là, dans les ombres.
Champ de minerais épuisé.
Téléportation réussie. Je suis là.
Amélioration terminée. Amélioration terminée.
Téléportation réussie.
Vos alliés devez placer cela dans un champ d'énergie. Votre base est attaquée. Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais.
Ma vie pour ailleurs. Parez au combat. Bien compris. Je vaincrai.
Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais. Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais. Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais.
J'obéis. Sire avec rayon. Téléportation réussie.
Champ de minerais épuisé. Notre pylône subit une attaque. Vos alliés livrent bataille. Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais.
Je suis là, dans les
Recherche terminée. Votre base est attaquée. Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais. Vos alliés livrent bataille.
Je suis là, dans les ombres.
Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais.
Exprimez votre volonté.
Vous n'avez pas assez de minerais.
À votre service.
Notre pylône subit une attaque.
Bien compris. Je suis là, dans les ombres. Étonnant. Froide fureur. À votre service. Les cieux nous attendent. Vous avez besoin de moi.
La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos alliés, vous n'avez pas assez de minerais. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Terminée.
Téléportation. Vos
Amélioration terminée.
Je sors de l'ombre.
Champ de minerais, vous n'avez pas assez de minerais.
Je sors de l'ombre. Montrons notre fureur à l'ennemi.
Vos alliés livrent bataille. Placez cela dans un champ de combat. Vos alliés livrent bataille.
Je sors de l'ombre. Qu'attendez-vous de
Vos améliorations terminées.
C'est toi qui fais ça?
Vos alliés livrent bataille. Vous devez placer cela dans un champ d'énergie.
le vide réclame les siens.
La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos alliés livrent bataille. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos alliés livrent bataille. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos alliés livrent bataille.
Montrons notre fureur à l'ennemi.
Vos sondes sont attaquées. Vos alliés livrent bataille. La base de vos alliés livrent bataille.
J'obéis. Arme opérationnelle. J'attaque.
La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos alliés livrent bataille.
Pour l'honneur. Téléportation réussie.
Vous devez placer cela dans un champ d'énergie. Champ de minerais épuisé. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos alliés livrent bataille.
Notre pylône subit une attaque.
La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Champ de minerais épuisé. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos alliés livrent bataille.
Le combat est imminent.
Vous devez placer cela dans un champ d'énergie. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos sondes sont attaquées.
Notre pylône subit une attaque.
J'attaque.
La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos sondes sont attaquées. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos sondes sont attaquées. Vos sondes sont attaquées.
Sors de l'ombre.
Minerais épuisé. Votre base est à base de vos alliés. Vos alliés livrent bataille.
Montrons notre fureur à l'ennemi.
La base de vos alliés est assiégée.
Montrons notre fureur à l'ennemi.
La base de vos alliés est assiégée.
Notre pylône subit une attaque.
La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos sondes sont attaquées. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Vos sondes sont attaquées.
Notre pylône subit une attaque.
Vos alliés sont attaqués. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Votre base est attaquée. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Votre base est attaquée. Vos alliés livrent bataille. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. La base de vos alliés est assiégée. Votre base est attaquée.
Vas-y, avoue, c'est quoi ton secret? Hey, ah.
We're going to go ahead and get started, and I just first want to get a sense of those who have been through the training before. And actually, those, probably a few of you, so those who have not been through the training before. If you could just give me a Y if you have not. All right, so there's about, okay. All right, good. Okay, so we've got a mix here of those who haven't been through the training, those that have been through the training. So we are going to be making sure that we are getting those people who have not been through the training the information they need. And for those who have been through the training, I want it to repeat to help cement some of the concepts, but I also want to add a few things as we go through the week in terms of chart reading, volume profile reading, and specifically reading to a specific market, a specific instrument to find trades and then to execute trades.
I've got a new setup for you guys, so I'll walk you through it.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Day one, beat the market. We're going to go through some basic things in terms of the, let me get to the agenda, in terms of the structure of the course. I specifically designed this and sequenced this so that new traders, existing traders, could effectively learn how to use the OFA tools for trading and how to understand not only the concepts, but how to apply those concepts to find trade entries, to understand the context of the market, to manage trades effectively, and to manage to a profit target. So if you've listened to any of my my recordings, you know that I manage to a profit target. I don't, that's how I manage my trades. I don't manage specifically to a trade, but I manage my profit target. It helps me personally over the years, I found, to stay objective and to effectively manage my risk as well as my reward. So there is homework, and the assigned quote-unquote, there is time that we have set aside for reviewing that and going through questions if you have any relative to the homework. The homework is always out there. It's an opportunity for you to come back to some of the concepts, some of the things that we've talked through. As you start to get into, you go through the information, you start getting into using the information, it's always there for you to come back to. But this, again, is your opportunity to learn. It's your time to ask questions, and every question is fair and legitimate. And if you don't understand something, even after an explanation, go ahead and ask. It's my job to manage the time that we have together today and this week, So if I need to keep moving, then I will do so, and we'll find a time to come back to it. I'll put it kind of to the side in the parking lot, and we'll come back to it. But I want to make sure you're asking the questions, and you have an opportunity to learn, to get your questions answered.
This gray line. On the left side here, I have the overnight. So this entire area here.
All right, I've been through this. There is a test for the overall course. Of course, the tests are not graded. This isn't a class. You're not paying tuition, so to speak, for it. It's just there and used to reflect the key elements and the fundamentals, and have you be able to go back to something again and see the questions, get the answers, and understand the concepts better. So start with the fundamentals. And everything in life, we always start with the fundamentals. They're extremely important in anything that you want to do well in. So I coach my son's football team, and they're all 9, 10 years old, and they're learning to do things like block and hike, and their playbook consists of about 20 plays, and that's about it. It's about as much as they can handle. But they're learning the fundamentals, and the reason I bring up this example is because what they're going through is no different than what a trader goes through in learning the fundamentals, and that's what this is about. That's what this whole week is about. So with football, these guys are learning how to block, they're learning how to tackle, they're learning how to make plays, how to hand off, all of those things that individuals and a team needs to do in order to build upon and to improve and to win. And it's the same thing in trading, and that's what this week is about. It's about the fundamentals, and then learning how to take those fundamentals and use that as foundation and building blocks into your style of trading. So one of the things that you're going to hear me say a lot is that every trader is different, and that's very true. Every trader is different, and you're different than me, and I'm different than DB, and everybody here is different. Everything that we bring to the market, our objectives, our capital, what we've done in business, what we've done in trading, our experience, all of it is different. What I want to be able to show you this week is that these fundamentals are the same as they relate to the market. And we all have the same information. That's where we all come together and have a common ground, is with the market and with the OFA tools. So how can we use these, once we understand the fundamentals, how can we use them and apply them to our method, our type of trading, the instrument that we want to trade with, or instruments that we want to trade with, so that we can do well. And it's also important, the reason we go through this training is that everybody begins with the same base of understanding. So the other thing you'll hear me talk about this week is, DB and George have built some tools here with OFA that aren't just, kind of generic for sale kind of tools, kind of like at least my experience is that everybody else has with NinjaTrader. These tools are incredibly useful and powerful as you start understanding these fundamentals. So as we all begin with the same base of understanding, we can all take off from there and apply what it is we want to do. But it's important that we all have that same base. So those that are new need to have the same base of understanding with the tools and the parameters, as well as the market and the market principles, as those who've been trading for 15 years. So we want to be able to use that volume profile across instruments, and it's directly related to how well one understands and applies the fundamentals. So we're going to go through some things this week relative to the volume profile, and the volume profile is nothing more than another tool. But when you combine that with the strength of the order flow, and not just any order flow, but specifically with OFA, that shows you strength and weakness at any given point in time, where volume is coming into the market, those added tools used in tandem with the volume profile and other tools that OFA has become incredibly powerful across the different instruments. But again, it's important that we start with the same base of understanding.
we are out.
So I'm going to be using slides for teaching concepts and presenting information. But when it comes to showing you examples, learning how to read, I'm not going to provide you with another screenshot. But we're going to go into the market and show you live tick-by-tick data, volume clusters, those type of things, so that it can be practical and you can see some real examples of how to read and how to use these tools, how to use the principles of the things that you're learning to read a market and to find your opportunities and to trade. But in order to take full advantage of the teaching, the time we have, you'll hear me talk about this through the week. I highly recommend that you complete the homework assignments and, more importantly, take notes. Take lots of notes. One of the differences between those who get this stuff and productively use it going forward and those that don't, that I have found throughout the years, and I've been doing this for, seems like a long time, it has been a long time, is that those who are able to take this information and move forward successfully are the ones that take notes. So again, whether you do it online on your computer or you do it on a notebook. I prefer a notebook because it means you're actively doing something. However you want to do it, make sure that you take notes. So the course is structured and broken down into several objectives over the next 5 days. Days 1 and 2, we go over the market auction, order flow, and volume profile. When I talk about foundation, it doesn't get any more foundational than that. These are the foundations and the constructs of every market, every instrument, excuse me.
And what we can see is within milliseconds, algo's coming in and quickly flashing price.
All right, just needed to clear my throat.
200, 100.
All right, market auction, price discovery and movement, OFA framework. We're going to pull those things together as well as the volume profile, and we are going to understand foundationally how those things work together. Day 3, we're going to go through trends, fades, reversals, and how the OFA tools can be used and how they apply. So every trader is a little bit different. So some people prefer to play trend is the friend. Other people prefer the fades and reversals, meaning price going in the other direction. But we're going to find out how to use and look at how to use the OFA tools and set the parameters so that you can trade both. We're going to be using the exhaustion indicator, learning how to build trends, show trends, and what's interesting is you can see trends if you're just specifically looking at a chart. Maybe it's a 5-minute chart, 15-minute chart, 30-minute chart, whatever it is that you primarily use, and you might see a trend, but that trend doesn't show up in another chart, or you don't see a trend, but a trend shows up in another chart. And we're going to take a look at that relative to timing of the market and time frames. We're going to look at learning how to read market context, how to use the volume cluster analysis, how to use the momentum analysis, and look at the framework, the OFA framework, and review it and understand the impact of the settings in the framework. So what that means is the OFA framework becomes critically important to everything else that you do. Everything else that you do kind of revolves around, when you get into actual trades, revolves around that OFA framework. So understand how you change things in the OFA framework can change what you see in the market. Very powerful, very flexible tool. One of the other things I really like about it is that I can customize it by instrument. So with that I mean, when I consider the CL or oil or gold, that can move very fast and very erratically, not that the ES can't and some of the indexes can't, but consistently, when I look at something like oil, CL, compare that to ES, which is a lot more volume and a little bit more steady in terms of movement, smaller range typically. When I consider those things, I can effectively change my parameters and my settings and the OFA tool sets to help me better interpret, see and interpret what's going on between buyers and sellers. So day 4, we're going to be looking at the trading fundamentals. Now, days 1, 2, and 3, we're looking at market and tool fundamentals. So days 1 and 2, we're going through market fundamentals. Day 3, we're going more into the details of the tools and those fundamentals. And then day 4, we're looking at trading fundamentals. So when we're talking about fades and trends and things like that, how to trade. So there's a difference between knowing the tools and understanding the market principles and understanding those things, and then there is a gap, a chasm, if you will, from moving into how to trade. And when we start thinking about how to trade, there's a lot of things that come into play, and this is what trips up a majority of the traders. How to read context, in terms of finding your trades that align with your overall strategy. How to use the tools to your advantage. How to find a strategy, stay with the strategy, and how to execute. How do you perform risk management? What are your trading objectives? Trading psychology, and the whole trading psychology thing. You know, there are lots of courses and reams of information on trading psychology. It is very real. Now, there's a lot of stuff, in my opinion, that is more difficult to apply for people relative to psychology, because it's a little bit squishier. There's no parameters around psychology. But at the same time, how it affects your emotions, and how the key to psychology when we get into it in day 4 is how your psychology, or what you see and what you interpret and things you fear, how it translates into you becoming more subjective and less objective is the root of the psychological issues. So as things transform your vision, what you see, into making you a subjective trader, meaning more emotional psychology is affecting you, that psychology becomes real. The more that you can remain objective, learning how to read the market, learning how to control your trigger finger, your emotions, learning how to control your risk, those type of things, those things become less of a psychological issue, and that's where we want to get you. It's one of the other things, and the other thing you'll hear me do is, I'm not trying to sell OFA because you have already purchased it, but I want you to understand the investment that you made. The investment that you made in OFA can and will pay itself over and over again. And the psychology piece becomes very real. One of the things I love about OFA is probably the one tool out of all the tools I've ever been able to use that helps me to remain objective in my trades, because I can pure and simply see what the market is actually doing, what the buyers and sellers are trying to do, and what they're actually doing, and how successful they're being in what they're trying to do. That helps me stay objective in my trade. Even if it means getting out of a trade and the trade takes off, it helps me stay objective, and it helps me become patient. Those things are incredibly important to your success as a trader. So last thing here, trading strategies. What are the patterns? What are the trends? How do you read order flow? What does it mean? Volume profile. What does a stop look like? When is a stop likely to happen? How's a stop setting up? Typically, those type of trading strategies everybody uses. And what I want to eventually get you to is, I don't care if you use somebody else's tool, or I don't know, pattern trading or whatever it is, but you have to understand the market context and what is going on behind that tool or that system before you can make a trade. So if you've been used to kind of looking at, you know, squiggly lines and these things and these indicators and whatever it might be, and the system says go short when these 4 things converge and stay in for 2 points, whatever it is, if you're kind of used to that level of trading, what this week is about, and this is what OFA does really, really well, what this week is about is taking you behind those things and understand what's going on in the market between buyers and sellers. so that whether you're using a specific strategy or something you've used before, you know how it is. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I've purchased probably close to $40,000 worth of classes and CDs. Yeah, when I first started trading, it was all on CD. Nothing was online. But rooms, I've paid a lot of money to those things, and I found that they worked for a little bit, and then all of a sudden they didn't work for a long time, and I had to go find something else and pay more money, and that over time just becomes a losing proposition. What you're going to find with OFA, and our objective here is to take you behind those strategies so that you can understand the context of a market and what buyers and sellers are trying to do. When you understand those things, you can look at any trading system per se and understand pretty quickly if it's a bunch of bogus or if there's actually something to it. So when people can tell you why between buyers and sellers something is working or not working, that's good. If you can figure it out, if you can understand what's going on between buyers and sellers to make a system or a specific trade type work, that is our goal. And that is the most significant value of OFA. So day 5, we're going to bring what we learned this week, our tools, our strategy, and our everything that we've learned in those 4 days together to define our personal objectives, make sure that you are familiar with the instrument that you want to trade or instruments, build your plan. So real quickly, we're going to take a break here in a couple minutes just to break up the day. When I talk about familiarizing yourself with the instrument, when I was a new trader and from emails that I get from people, I find that people trade a whole lot of instruments, and that's fine. If that's something you want to do and you feel comfortable doing it, that's fine. My experience is, and what I would tell you is that every instrument has its own nuance. So the principles that the market principles that I use for oil as well as for ES and anything else that I might trade, ZB, whatever it might be. However, some of the nuances of those particular instruments, and more importantly, the nuances of the traders in those instruments are different. And when you can start to understand those nuances, it makes you a more effective trader in those instruments. My experience is if you try to do that with a whole bunch of instruments up front, it becomes very difficult to focus on those market principles and to determine what those nuances are in a specific instrument. So we're going to talk about that and how to be successful. And success to me is achieving your objectives, not winning in every trade, but achieving your financial objectives. And financial objectives should be broken down not only into years, months, weeks, days, but into specific trades. So when I look at a trade and I'm getting into a trade, I look at it and say, what do I expect to get out of it relative to my objective, my daily objective? And when I understand that and I get to my objective, even if it may go further, I will take my profit. I try to stay objective with the trade. So how to get market context. Also want to make sure that you are planning your trades relative to your objective, and then how to execute. And then once you've executed, you're managing your trade, meaning your risk and your reward. How do you go back and review? What I will tell you is some of my best learning have come from my worst trades, meaning in terms of what I thought would happen in terms of dollar amount. My worst trades have produced some of my best learning opportunities. And it took me a while when I started trading to actually understand that when I had a bad day, instead of just turning off the computer and walking away, I had to do the very painful task of sitting down, knowing that I got my butt beat by the market, and go back to those trades that I made and find out what happened. What was I seeing? What was I interpreting that wasn't there, that made me lose in those trades? So how to review? All right, we're going to take a break here quick. I want to make sure that you get a notebook. I don't care, again, if you do this online or if you have a notebook. I recommend that whether you do it in something like Microsoft Word or if you do it on a piece of paper, which I recommend, that you get a notebook that is just for your education, call it your trading education, and that you make notes in that. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. One of the things we're going to do throughout the week, I want to make sure that this is broken up, that we are keeping you mentally engaged. So we're going to take breaks probably every 15 to 30 minutes, just so you can get some time, and we're going to do that now. We'll come back here at the bottom of the hour at 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern.
10 seconds to 9 a.m., but the volume is already starting to come in. A few seconds to the open, you can see that very clearly here. The new profile being created, giving us some good insight into what's happening, where price is bouncing off of. And here we go, here's the push. Gap down a little bit here on higher time frame, not a good sign. We need price to reverse right here. This is it. It can go technically a little further and hit our trend line, but we definitely don't want it to go past 78, but basically we don't want it to hit our stop. Stops at 74. We could jump it down to 69, but we're really risking a lot of money at that point. So this is worst case scenario for us right now. Had we pushed higher before the open, then a push down may have used this as a support, but instead we are going the opposite way. Okay, there's the push, the volume spike, and we're looking for a low to be created here for the day, for the trading day. 9:02, 2 minutes past. We are still coming in with an influx of volume, you can see. It's like Christmas here on Bookmap. And we are almost $1,000 under. We would not ever bring our stop up to here. I would rather lose out for the week than lose out for the day today. This might be a very good example of what not to do in trading. What we should have done was waited for price to reach this level and then bought. However, we bought on information. I think if we do get stopped out, we can say that the next time we won't try to roll in the next entry with the previous entry, because that gives us a much larger risk profile. We're hoping to see now you see how buyers didn't step away here when price reached this level here at 75. They did not step away. We're going to begin bringing our stop up. We are definitely going to be trailing this now. As far as we can anyway. We need this cluster of volume to shift up with price as price moves higher. And sellers coming in with a lot of strength there. A lot of strength.
Order filled. Order cancelled.
Okay, so I think it's about time to
Order.
this one as
Order
well.
cancelled.
So you can see we've moved along nicely. Moved along very nicely. And we're just taking targets along the way. What we can do as well is take a look at the footprint chart here. And we can see that price is rising steadily. And what we want to do is get behind the cluster of volume here. We could probably get up behind the volume weighted average price as well. That's giving us a nice push higher. I think we're getting some selling pressure, so let's just take the
Order
third.
cancelled.
Okay, so we took 3 targets there. That area, and that leaves us 3 more to go. We're not basically not going to allow price to go to break even plus 1 here, because we're definitely not going to be giving up anything. So it moves our stop up to 94. Now we are in a risk-free trade. And price looks like it might be coming down to take us here. We need it to turn around here at the cluster weighted average price. And I thought that was a little strange. For some reason my profits aren't coming through here. So these are the actual profits here. I'll just show you. So we're actually up about $312.92. I don't know why that's not showing up here. Let me see if I can fix that.
Order cancelled.
Chat with Traders, episode 62.
The biggest secret of the best traders in the world is that they're just like everyone else. However, they've worked hard to learn the markets and discover what works and what doesn't. But how can you hear about these journeys and get in on the strategies and tactics they use? You can do it by listening to Chat with Traders. Here's your host, Aaron Fifield.
This episode of Chat with Traders is sponsored by Wonder Capital, an online platform that allows accredited investors to invest in large-scale solar projects across the US. Wonder's solar investment funds have targeted returns of up to 11% annually with no fees. For all the finer details, visit wondercapital.com/traders and create a free account. And note, that's Wonder spelt with a U. What's up, traders? Welcome to episode 62. For this episode, I spoke with Tracy, otherwise known as Shy Girl on Twitter. Tracy is a technical intraday trader, but also tracks fundamentals very closely. She solely focuses on the energy sector and has an obsession with crude oil. Yes, obsession may sound like a strong word, but you'll soon understand. During our interview, Tracy shares her story about how she up and left LA to chase her desire of becoming a trader, and how she wound up at a hack shop brokerage, which is best described as a scene from the trading movie Boiler Room. We also discuss the bear market of oil, the impact falling prices have on a macro level, the skill sets that have helped Tracy to survive and thrive as a trader, plus much more. And last thing, Tracy has kindly offered to answer any questions that you may have, whether they're about oil specifically or just trading in general. So go to chatwithtraders.com/62, scroll to the bottom of the page, and write your questions in the comments area. All right, team, here we go. I'm your host, Aaron Fifield, and here is this week's guest, Tracy, aka Shy Girl on Twitter. Hey, Tracy, what's up? How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing very well. It's awesome to be speaking with you, and I think the timing for this interview is really good. Also, seen as oil is all the hype right now, and that's pretty much the niche that you focus on. But before we get into what it's really like to trade a commodity market like oil, let's talk about how you got to where you are right now. So, Tracy, how did you get your start in the industry? And just for some added context, what were you doing before this also?
Okay. Well, actually, it's kind of a funny story. I was studying international relations with an emphasis on Middle East politics. And I thought I wanted to go to law school and didn't end up going to law school. So I took a job in sales selling medical supplies. And although it was great, I was traveling all the time. I hated it. I was living in Los Angeles, which was great. But I decided one day I wanted to get into this business. So I literally quit my job and moved to Chicago, because that's the place to be if you want to start in the commodities industry. And had never been there before, sight unseen, had no job, just went for it. Pretty much I knocked on every possible door. No one wanted to hire a girl, for sure. I had to beg for my first job, which actually was, I started at the beginning. I started ground floor at a brokerage, which was pretty much your straight out of Boiler Room hack shop. In fact, they even got shut down by the NFA for something that happened long before I got there, by the way. But I had to beg for my job because nobody thought, nobody wanted women. I was the only woman my company had ever hired. And I started there basically, hacking away the 200 calls a day, asking mom and pop for 10 grand to trade options and futures.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's break this down a little more. So just backtracking a little, I actually understand that your father was also a commodities trader. Did this have any influence on, your decision?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I had said it that, I thought that with my background, with what I had studied, being that I didn't go to law school, that I could use that for I wanted to trade oil. So, that was a good background for that. So my father was in the industry, so I was familiar with the industry. So, I mean, it wasn't like I just had no exposure ever to the industry or anything and decided to chuck my job.
Okay. And what was the decision that led up to you chucking that job? And did you reach a snapping point where you just kind of felt like this is it, it's kind of now or never?
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like, I was still young, but I was traveling all the time. I was living in a great apartment that overlooked the ocean in Newport Beach. and I was traveling, 5 days a week, and I was tired, and I was selling medical grade plastics, which if I can't tell you what a more boring subject it